Keba Arnold, news anchor from Fox TV News. Keba was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes herself, and therefore makes a great speaker for us this morning. I'm not going to share her story because she will do that herself, but one of the things I already know about Keba, and I think that's true for most people with type 1 diabetes, is that even though she's a celebrity, she's a regular person just like us, and she's part of the community, and that's what makes her so special. So without further ado, Keba, thank you.
Good morning, everyone still making your way in. Come on in, good morning. Let's get this settled here. Thank you all for being here on this wet Sunday and early. You lost that hour. Just a quick story. I did 8 years on a morning newscast before moving here. So I would be up at 1 in the morning getting ready for work. Well, now I work the noon to 7 shift. So this is crazy early for me. How did I do that for 8 years? And I got to be in San Francisco at 8 a.m. How am I going to do it? But I'm here. I'm glad you are all here. So thank you again for being here. I am fairly new to the Bay Area. After working at a news station in Sacramento for 5 years, I just moved here just this past June to help launch a new newscast on KTVU. So I co-anchor the 4 p.m. and I also anchor the 7 p.m., which is on our sister station. That's KICU TV 36. And as many of you know, diabetes is a day-by-day, meal-by-meal disease. And some days, you just don't feel like it. You don't feel like giving your insulin shots. You don't feel like checking your pump. You don't feel like testing your blood sugar. But you do because you know that you should, and you know what will happen if you don't. Diabetes certainly was a life changer for me. It changed my world, my routine, and it changed the way I looked at life. It changed the way I thought about life. My diabetic story, it starts back in 2013. That's when my life changed dramatically. I was diagnosed with what they first thought was type 2. I was in my middle 30s, so they thought it was type 2. My A1C was 9.7. My average glucose was 232. It was bad. I felt bad. I lost weight. I was always thirsty. I was always using the bathroom, always tired. Chronic, awful yeast infections. I had blurry vision. I could eat like no other, and I wasn't gaining the weight, and I wasn't always nice. I was crazy. At first, a lot of it we attributed to being a morning anchor. I was getting up at 1:30 in the morning, and that's why you're tired. That's why you're maybe thirsty all the time. Maybe you're not drinking enough water. So the classic signs, that's what I had. For a year, I had to learn to live with what my doctor told me was type 2. The stigma, the diet change, watching my carbs, the side effects of metformin, which worked at first. The metformin seemed to be working at first. I guess they call it the honeymoon period. Then the metformin, it just stopped working. It wasn't working. All along, I knew something wasn't right. The type 2 diagnosis, it just didn't seem right. All the things I was reading, all the research, it didn't seem right. Fortunately, just like you all, there's a fantastic diabetic community in Sacramento. I met one woman, she was a diabetic as well, had been one for 20-some years. She told me, you have to go in there and insist, tell your doctor you want something that's called the GAD-65 blood test. The what? So I wrote it down, and I went into my doctor, and she saw my numbers, so she knew the metformin was no longer working. We did the blood test, and in June of 2014, what I feared and suspected became a reality. I was diagnosed with type 1. Soon after, I started on Lantus and Novolog, someone that hated needles. I was giving myself shots several times a day. I'm on Humalog now in Lantus. Back then, for me, the adjustment was rough. The extreme highs and lows wore on me physically and mentally. It was hard to just do my job, to be on TV and speak to people even though I just wasn't feeling right, and mentally I didn't know how I would live with this disease. Trying to figure out the correct dosage, that was challenging as well. I would either give too much or too little, and the lows and the highs were really tough. I remember one night, the first night, I dropped really low. I think I was in the 50s or 40s. It was bad. I was sweating, the rapid heartbeat. I was home alone. I was in Sacramento at the time. I thought I was having a heart attack. I'm in my middle 30s. I didn't know what was going on. And then it occurred to me, maybe you have a low blood sugar. So after a few weeks, lots of research, doctor visits with the diabetic educators, it got better. And today it is better. I'm living a happy life, a meaningful life. I'm healthy. I'm managing my diabetes. I'm managing my blood sugar. I'm taking my insulin. I'm figuring it out. And diabetes has had quite the impact, not just on me, but on my family as well. My older brother, he's 40 now. He was diagnosed about 27 years ago. So in the house, I grew up with needles. I knew he had to take shots. I knew as a little sister that my big brother had this thing, but I didn't really, it was him. It didn't really impact me. Well, now I know. All those years, now I totally get it. And he's the best person to get advice from. He loves to tell me, what I should be doing and how I should be doing it. Still a big brother, right? Even though I'm like, I'm almost 40 now. But organizations like Carb DM, we have to remember, all of us, and even for your children who are diabetics, we're not alone. There are so many of us. Events like today, it helps us work towards supporting those living with diabetes and helping us live our best lives, and ultimately continuing the vital research that happens that will, we hope, lead us to a cure. So again, thank you all for being here. I'd like to also say a special thank you to my mom, Hassie Arnold, as you heard now, a parent to 2 type 1s. She's here visiting from Southern California, and a special thank you to my dear friend and colleague. She's actually there recording this. She's been one of my biggest supporters since I was diagnosed with type 1, and that's what's got me through. Family and friends who may not quite understand what you're going through because they're not the ones testing all day long, and you get those little marks on your fingers, and they're not the ones giving shots, but they're there for you. And I hope today that you're able to walk away with a wealth of information from our wonderful presenters.